Hey there, everybody. It's Leanne here, and welcome to this live broadcast all about ending the dieting madness. I'm so excited about this topic. I have so much that I want to teach on this in this area, but I'm going to try and just give you the most, condensed version as far as what it is that I feel like you need to know in regards to losing weight. And the biggest thing before I dig into any of the other details is that we need to shift into a place where the weight loss isn't the goal. Once we're able to shift into a place that it's all about health, and once we get to a place where we are healthier on the inside, then the outside takes care of itself. So my background is in counseling psychology. I've also worked in the fitness industry for a little while, and I've been studying nutrition and holistic health and healing for many, many years. So I have a lot of knowledge around this personally, professionally, as well as just a passion for it and wanting to learn. So my journey has been sort of a lot of weaving in and out of different issues with adrenal fatigue, disordered eating, and just never really completely, up until now probably, where I feel like I'm in a pretty good place, never really ever fully being happy with my body or how it looks, and feeling like I always need to be trying the next diet and reducing what I'm eating more, or maybe there's the wrong foods I'm eating because the next diet expert tells you, or nutrition expert says not to eat this or that. So I know I'm not alone in this, because I've spoken to many, many, many women over the past 6 years in my private practice and in other areas, as well as when I've done live events. And so many women struggle in these areas of really just never feeling completely happy with where they're at and continually searching for the next magic diet or food plan. So really what this comes down to is that there is no magic bullet, and there isn't a one size fits all. And that when this is going on and we're in this constant hunger for something that we're not really sure what it is, we're constantly seeking the answers and feeling like they're outside of us, there's a deeper issue going on. And that's really the bottom line of what it is that I teach. I'm not a weight loss coach or a weight loss therapist. That is not who I want to be. It's not who I want to serve. I want to serve the women who understand that it's an inside out health issue, and it's got to happen on a mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional level, that there is no diet plan that's going to help you if you have other stuff that's going on underneath. So one thing to really keep in mind is that your body size really means nothing about your health, and that it also has nothing to do with disordered eating. So we're going to go over a little bit of what disordered eating might look like, and on different sides of the spectrum, as far as some of you may have already heard of anorexia and bulimia and binge eating, and there's those different more clinical terms, but there's also some gray area and some in-between area in there that often gets missed, and people, especially women, fall through the cracks in these areas that are kind of in between, where they don't fit in one of the extremes, but sort of just play in between, just trying to figure it out in some of the behaviors I mentioned before, of just the seeking, constantly trying to figure out what they need to do to fill that place within them that is feeling sort of empty and hollow, and trying to search for it through food or diets or new meal plans and things like that. So some signs of disordered eating are more or less just an obsession with calorie counting. Now, this is where it can be that gray area, because there's a lot of diet systems and plans out there that really encourage calorie counting and point systems and things like that. So if you're someone that's just strictly wanting to lose weight, and you see that that's the issue, that it's just the calories, and once I get those dialed, it'll all be good, that's where I want to really challenge your thinking. Calories are created equal. So we'll go more into that later on. But first of all, one of the main signs is this obsession with calorie counting and constantly worrying about the calories that you're consuming. The next one is obsession with diets. Like I mentioned, that constant feeling of needing to find the next best thing. Maybe that the next diet will be the answer, or the next meal plan will finally be the answer. And we're just continually searching and searching outside of ourselves. And we think we found the answer, and maybe we go in that direction only to find that we're right back where we began. So again, it's that obsession, obsessive fixating thinking patterns. Also, just a tendency to want to be searching for the next detox or cleanse, thinking that that's going to be the answer. Then there's the strict self-inflicted diet rules where we kind of put ourselves in our own prison. And I was definitely here for many, many years of an eating disorder that's a newer term that's not recognized by clinical psychology as far as being diagnosable, but it's called orthorexia. And I've spoken about this in other areas in my work, that this was my journey more recently, in the last few years, is that really obsession and fixating on healthful eating to the point where it's that perfectionism sets in and that it's all or nothing. And if you're, not eating in the way you think you should be, then you're just a failure, or, it determines how you feel about yourself. So when your rules and lists of foods that you're allowed, deeming yourself allowed, becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're living in this little bubble of things that you're allowed to eat, and you're finding that you're avoiding social situations, you're avoiding restaurants and eating out because the foods you are allowed to eat probably won't be there. And there's just a lot of stress and anxiety around it. And so that's really not how it's meant to be, right? Like, that's not really living. So self-inflicted strict rules are another sign. They just your world becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. You are wrapped up in the calories in, calories out mentality, thinking that if I eat this and I run it off over here, that it's going to balance itself out. And you've constantly got the numbers going in your head, right? You could just get your numbers to a T by the end of the day, what went in, what came out. And again, it's just another behavior of controlling and fixating. And again, that's not the issue. That, if it was all just about calories, then we likely wouldn't have the obesity and health epidemic that we have due to obesity if it was simply just about restricting calories. There's many women who, get to a place in these unhealthy realms of restricting their food so much that they're barely eating anything, and yet they're still not able to shed the weight. So that is why it's not about the weight. It's not about the calories and all of that. There's a lot more going on. Then there's the other spectrum of the exercise fixation, again, which can really just fall through the cracks with someone who is doing it just, as a way of being healthy. And there's a lot of advice around, work out every day of the week and make sure you're staying active and push yourself and, push your upper limit, and that, you can't out exercise a bad diet and all of those things. So when you are someone that is focused on wellness, which a lot of the people that are listening to this probably are, and a lot of my audience is, it can be really easy to just look at, exercise obsession and eating really well is just, I'm really healthy, I'm really health conscious. But then there's a point to where it can tip into sort of a gray or a really dark area, right? Where it's a slippery slope. The other spectrum to that is scale obsession, which I've seen this with women, and I was definitely there at one time where I would weigh myself several times a day, and then depending on the number on the scale, that would determine how I felt about myself or the mood that I would slip into. And I've worked with many women in this exact scenario, that they feel like if they're not on top of the scale, then they're just going to gain weight because they're not on top of it. And that's really not the case, because what we focus on grows. So if you're focusing on that rather than the true work that needs to be done within you, coming back to yourself and bringing yourself back into wholeness, then it's not dealing with the real root cause either. So this is how I look at it, is that there is this out of control eating behaviors and the controlled eating behaviors. So what I failed to mention before I went through those is those are what I would consider more into the controlling behaviors. So a lot of times when we have this emotional disordered relationship to food, we're swinging from one end to the next of controlling and then feeling out of control. Or maybe we do swing more into one area and a little bit less in the other, right? So those are more in the realm of wanting to control and restrict, right? And keep, just getting tighter and tighter around what you're doing, having a tighter grip. So then there's the out of control behaviors, which we know of as binge eating disorder. Some people are not able to stop once they start eating. It could be in certain situations, it could be with certain foods, there could be trigger foods that trigger a binge eating episode. It could be something that happens in your life. A particular time of day can be the trigger. There's so many different things. So that would be considered part of the out of control behaviors. And then not being able to stop once you start, like not feeling like you have that off button or ability to stop once you start. You also have food anxiety. So if you are about to maybe eat a meal, or you're out with friends, or you're out in an event, there's a lot of anxiety around the food and worrying about what's going to be there, if you can eat it, if it's allowed on your list. Will you be able to stop eating? If you see a dessert table, do you start sweating and becoming, having those anxious feelings, worrying that you're not going to be able to stop yourself? So food anxiety. And then how you eat is negatively affecting your health and well-being. So those are, that's an indicator that there's something really going on there that needs to be dealt with. If your out of control behaviors are affecting your health. So if you are someone that's binge eating, or you're eating food that is contributing to high blood pressure, diabetes, heart issues, different things that can happen from being obese, then you really know that you need to look at things, right? You really have to look deeply at what is really truly going on, the emotional root causes, because your health is everything, right? So, you're obviously, we know all about this when it comes to health, that, the more weight that we carry, especially around the middle, just increases the risk of heart disease and all these things, especially in women. So when we're looking at it from a health standpoint, are your eating behaviors contributing to your lack of health and vitality? So that's really important to know. And is it affecting your well-being, just how you feel day to day? Is it affecting your inner peace? And then the last point I'll make on the list of out of control behaviors is hiding food, or hiding your eating behaviors, feeling a lot of shame around how you eat, how much you eat, what you're eating, and you kind of tend to hide it. And I've seen some pretty sad stories, really. I've heard some sad stories from women that I've worked with that had to hide certain behaviors from their spouse or from their kids, or they, hoard food and hide it somewhere where they know that they can have it. It's like that feeling of needing to have some control. And because of that, there is that inner shame that I'm going to get found out. And then what does that mean about me? So definitely those are some ways to know if your healthful eating has gone into the unhealthy realm, and it needs to, be looked at on a different level. So emotionally, to know that if you have sort of a emotional relationship to food, is, do your emotions affect how you eat? This is a really huge indicator that there's an emotional connection to food. Now, some of this is just biologically programmed within us from infancy, when we're, being breastfed. If we were breastfed, we associate that with nurturing and emotional comfort, that being fed, right? So it's not completely all of our fault if we still remember that that's how we feel most nurtured, right? Like if you think about times when you do have a really amazing meal and you have just amazing food, you do feel good inside. It feels really grounding and really just wonderful. But if it goes too far to where that's the only time you can experience that feeling of nourishment and peace and satisfaction and pleasure, if that's the only way you find it, that's where it can become extreme. And if your emotions are affecting the foods that you eat, that is really important to know as well. So the number on the scale determines your mood. That's another one that I mentioned before. So that's another way to know you have an emotional connection to your food and body issues, is that if the number on the scale actually affects how you feel about yourself, that's a really, really big red flag. And just really, in the end, there's a lot of guilt and shame, and you're just not enjoying your life, right? When we're living like this, it does suck the joy out of living. And it wasn't until I really got to this place where I realized that my eating behaviors were still a problem. I was still doing a lot of controlling, and then going over to the other end of it and just eating whatever's in sight, because I felt like I was so deprived because of this self-inflicted, really short list of foods that I was allowed to eat because of what the food experts tell us that are good and bad, right? So this is what I see with many, many women. And as I'm digging more and more into the research and really just seeing what is happening with women and with these issues is, I'm not alone and you're not alone if this is you. This is something that, this day and age with all the health information that's out there, it's great, but it can be really overwhelming. And it can also be conflicting. So if you're someone that tends toward disordered eating behaviors and you have more of an addictive personality, maybe you have perfectionism stuff, it can really be a slippery slope. And we need to look at the inner issues as to why we become addicted to food, fixating on calories, addicted to exercise, addicted to sugar, pop, fast food, all the things that we know are hindering our health and that are contributing to disease, the things that are known to contribute to disease, right? If you're treating your body in ways and you know it's having an effect on your health, then what does that say about how you truly value yourself? So it's really important to know that it comes down to so much more than weight loss. And that's why the inner work really has to happen in order to get there. If that's part of your goals, then you need to look at what's going on underneath the real root causes. So then how it also affects your life relationally is that you begin to avoid people out of fear and shame. It could be just shame in general for how you are around food and how you feel about your body. You might start to avoid people. And as I mentioned before, you start to maybe avoid social events or doing things socially because of this funky relationship to food and how you eat. Maybe you feel out of control around food and you're afraid to go into social situations where there will be food. So that's relationally, and then spiritually, being that our body is the vehicle for our soul. And I love that idea. I remember hearing that many, many years ago. I think it was from Wayne Dyer, that, our body is the vehicle for the soul that is here to live out a certain purpose. And if we're not honoring our body and treating it with respect, then it's going to be very hard to have that meaningful spiritual connection that we really do crave, because often that's what we're craving. And when I say spiritual, that really is just any higher power that is within your own understanding. It can be, anything God, spirit, divine, universe, love. There's just so many different ways. And I don't believe that there's any wrong way to see this energy and to see this higher power. But when we are operating with these kind of behaviors, we've disconnected from our soul and our higher power. We're just disconnected completely from really anything, right? We've lost connection with our body and we don't even know how we feel moment to moment. And so we're just constantly searching for something to soothe. And usually it's food or a diet or a meal plan or exercise. Could be lots of other things, but we're focusing in these areas right now. And so it's really important to know that on a spiritual level, we need to do that work. If this is you and you're struggling in these areas, this would be definitely an area that you need to bring into focus. So when we're not connected to the divine in our soul, we seek for outer things to fill that void, as I said. Okay. So the other things that I want to cover here is if you are someone that is trying to lose weight and that is a goal, as I mentioned, there's lots of things that need to be looked at, lots of contributing factors. There are, that whole mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, relational stuff that I mentioned. And then there's also some physiological things, but these physiological things are also affected by all of what I've just mentioned. So it's a little bit of a puzzle to figure out sometimes. But once you start doing the work that I've just mentioned here and you start looking at all areas and start puzzling it together with the intention to bring yourself back into wholeness and to nourish yourself with more than just food, then a lot of this other stuff can start to take care of itself. But I'm going to just go over some weight loss resistance reasons, like underlying reasons why you could be trying all of these things. You could be working on your stress and exercising and eating as well as you know how, and still not, finding any result. And that can be quite frustrating. So some underlying reasons for that could be the quality of your calories. So as I mentioned before, all calories are not created equal. That was a quote I first learned from Dr. Mark Hyman. And that was when I first learned about this concept of it's not about the calories, it's about the quality. What kind of food are you eating? Is it food that has been manufactured in a factory, or is it food that's coming from the earth, that's whole food, nutrient dense, low in sugar, not processed? When we're eating those kind of foods, we don't need to worry about calories. We just need to pay attention to our hunger and full signals and eat intuitively, which I cover with my clients and inside of the Food Freedom program, is just how do you start eating more intuitively and knowing your hunger and full signals. So if you're following those things and you are focusing on, for the most part, I don't like to say we need to do this perfectly. You've got to allow for times when you're eating out, or you got to live. So focusing on high quality foods for the most part, then this is a really big foot forward in the right direction. If you are having sugar and processed food addiction, which many people do suffer with, because the foods that are manufactured today are made to become really palatable and addictive. The right amounts of fat, sugar, and salt in processed cookies and foods and different desserts, just pretty much anything manufactured is, can be highly addictive. And sugar is said to be as addictive as cocaine. I don't have any personal experience to know the similarities, but that's just something that I've heard many times in research. It's easy to find information about the toxicity of sugar and how addictive it is. And if you've ever done any type of cleanse where you've had to remove all forms of sugar and the response that happens when you do that, then that's a really good indicator that the body does become addicted to it. And one thing I know for sure is that the more you eat, the more you start to want. So when I go through periods of time where I'm really conscious and cleaning that up, and I just feel amazing when I just simply cut sugar out, and then it creeps back in and you're having it, and then you're starting to notice you want more and more of it because you started. It's like you flip that switch on. So that's really important to know. It could be hormone imbalance of different kinds. So there's thyroid, cortisol, your progesterone, estrogen, all the other hormones. There's quite a few. So if even one of those is off, then it creates a cascade of problems with all the others. So one of those areas of expertise that I have is in the adrenal fatigue realm. So dealing with that. And I have found quite often with women who are experiencing issues with weight and emotional eating and stress eating often have adrenal fatigue, at least in some part. And so that's my area of expertise, and where my zone of genius is to help women really figure out what's going on for them and to come up with a plan that's going to work for them. None of this cookie cutter stuff that, one size fits all, this is what you need to do and this is the answer. There is a framework, but, for each woman, it's going to look different. So there's that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, there's the binge eating. It's eating too much, of course. So eventually that could start to result in fat storage and weight gain. Not moving enough. So long periods of sitting, not getting out and moving enough. Stress and emotional eating to cope, as I mentioned, that's another area that, often when there's a lot of stress is when someone might notice that maybe their jeans suddenly don't fit. And so paying attention, are you eating outside of times that you're actually hungry? And blood sugar imbalances is another one. So definitely get your blood sugars checked. If you are someone that does carry a lot of weight around the middle, it's something to really important to monitor. A little personal side note about me is that my granny passed away in her 70s. I mean, she wasn't young, but a lot of people these days are living into their later 90s if they're healthy. But she passed away from complications of diabetes. And then my mom also has it. So it's something that I'm really determined to, prevent for myself. And, there's a lot out there about the whole genetic predisposition to things. And this is one area that it can be controlled and prevented just through lifestyle. So eating well, making sure you're not carrying fat around the middle because of health reasons, not for aesthetics, and that you're moving enough and that you are not, your diet is very low in processed sugar, if not completely void of it. Do your best to avoid it. And then some other areas are emotional malnourishment, like just really not tending to your emotional health. Maybe there's some hurts or some traumas or some things that you haven't dealt with. There could be some situations in current relationships that you're going through where you're not feeling free to express or maybe you're feeling powerless to change. These are all reasons why we store weight. And again, it usually leads back to we're using food to cope with these emotions. So lack of satisfaction, fun, and purpose again. So it's just losing connection with our soul purpose, and that we need to come back to that to fill the voids that we're trying to fill with food or diets or detoxes or whatever. So that's a lot of information, and definitely, for depending on who you are and what's going on with you, you may have a lot of these factors, or maybe there's just a couple going on. And maybe the path back is just a few little tweaks, or maybe it requires some deeper work and it's going to take a longer amount of time. So wherever you're at, forgive yourself for where you're at and any mistakes you feel like you've made, or you might be at this place where you've tried all the things and just feel like really frustrated and maybe like you just can't get it right. Let yourself off the hook and just give yourself permission to find a new way through, and have the goal be to come back to wholeness, to start to nourish yourself on all levels. And when you start doing that, and doing that from a place of healthy self-love, the food stuff starts to just sort of take care of itself. Because when you're truly loving and respecting yourself, you're not going to just be shoving anything in your mouth for the sake of feeling better for 5 minutes, because you know that that's not in alignment with where you want to go. And if you're someone that wants to get healthy and you're listening to this, obviously there's some level of you that wants that, then you need to look at what it is that you want. And then how can you start acting in ways that are in alignment with that are going to get you there? So if you say you want health, you say you want to slim down and feel better in your body, yet your eating habits and how you're taking care of yourself are not reflecting that, then there's no alignment. And what you want really is pretty much can't come to you, right? It's the way the law of attraction works as well. We can wish and pray to be healthy, but if we're not taking the actions to get there, it's probably not going to happen. All right. So just as a recap, with the areas of controlled, looking at where in your life are you controlling your food and dieting and intake, where are you feeling out of control, and where are you seeing the effects of this emotionally, relationally, and spiritually, and then, what physiological stuff might be going on. So the next step that I have for you, if you are wanting to take this deeper, is I have a program. It's an online program. It's called the Food, Mind, Body Freedom. And it goes over all of the issues that I've just listed here as sort of a framework for you to develop your own healing plan. So it's a framework and a map, but it's not a hard and fast program that you have to follow and there's no pass or fail. It's just, this is the framework. This is where you need to kind of go and start exploring. And this is how I recommend that you do it. And this is what's worked for my clients. This is how I've healed, gosh, I don't even know, 25 years of issues with food and my body. It's the path that I had to get to really understand that all of what I was doing was just I was seeking something different. Okay. So how you can get more information about that. So there's two options. I've created the program just by itself. It's $197. You get everything that you need in there. And then for a limited time until February 24th, so that's just till Friday, I've included an upgrade that includes a couple of sessions with me, but I'm taking that down February the 24th because I don't typically do 45-minute sessions, and I don't typically give discounts on my sessions because they're premium. And with half an hour with me, you will just experience radical shifts. So I'm offering that to those of you who are listening to this as my gift to help you to really start to take action and feel like you are succeeding in the right direction towards your health goals. So to find more information about those two options, just go to leanneoten.com/food freedom. And that is where you will find the information around both options, the do-it-yourself program on its own, or the one with sessions and a little bit of email support during that time, so that you have some support if you feel like you need that. So I hope that this has been helpful and inspiring and has given you some new stuff to think about. And I also invite you to join my Facebook group. It's a private women's Facebook group. If you're not already on there and you're listening, It's Thrive from the Inside Out. So if you go into Facebook and do the little search right in the group that, or in the Facebook internal search, and just search Thrive from the Inside Out, you will find it. And that's where you can get in touch with me and a group of women who are, working on some similar things. It's helpful to have a community of women that understand and who are also going after similar things in their life. So thanks so much to those of you who tuned in live, and I really appreciate you that you took the time out to listen to this if you're listening to the replay. And again, for more information about the programs, it's leanneoten.com/food freedom. Okay, take care.